For 3 years I played the role of his first love, wore her perfume, smiled her smile, and slept in her side of the bed. Then she came back. He thought I'd fight for him. He thought I'd crumble. But I walked out without tears, without goodbye, because I finally realized I was never the backup. I was the ending they never saw coming. 3 years ago I signed away my identity. The contract was simple, straightforward, and as cold as the man who offered it. Ethan Cross needed someone to fill a void, a silhouette to stand where someone else once stood. Not just anyone, but someone who looked like her, moved like her, breathed like her. And unfortunately for me, I qualified. That's how I became his first love stand-in. There were no romantic promises. No illusions of forever. I was Clara Wynne, a professional placeholder. A ghost with borrowed features. A soft-spoken, well-dressed replica of the woman he lost. The contract didn't ask for love, just presence. I'd be there when needed, vanish when not. In return, I had access to a life I could never afford on my own. Designer gowns, black cards, silk sheets, and a villa in East Fall Heights that overlooked the city skyline. It was a golden cage. And for a while I pretended not to notice the bars. Until last week, Sabrina Hayes, the original, returned to the country. She didn't need to announce it. There were no headlines or press releases. I simply knew. A woman always knows when her borrowed place is about to be reclaimed. I first sensed it in the silence. Ethan hadn't been to the villa in 7 nights. That wasn't unusual by itself. He often disappeared for days on end, but this absence felt different. Deliberate. Final. Then came the whisper from the boutique I frequented. "Miss Wynne," the manager said with a hesitant smile, "I'm sorry, but the new fishtail couture piece you requested has already been reserved." Her voice lowered. "By Mr. Cross. For someone else. For someone with the surname Hayes." That sealed it. The real her was back. The moment I stepped out of the boutique that day, a strange calm washed over me. I didn't cry or panic. I didn't spiral into a rage-fueled shopping spree. I simply stood there on the cobblestone sidewalk watching the early autumn leaves gather near the curb and thought, well, I guess it's time. 1 month remained on the contract. 30 days. I would not wait to be dismissed. I'd leave on my own terms. The very next morning I called my agent and finalized the closing paperwork for the small property I'd quietly purchased 2 months ago. A single-story cottage tucked in the sleepy green edge of Brookshore, a quiet suburb well away from the chaos of East Fall. No one knew about it. Not even Ethan. The house wasn't grand, just 2 bedrooms, a sun-drenched kitchen, and a backyard with a tree rumored to be 100 years old. But it was mine. Untouched. Unstaged. Unwatched. Freedom in the form of peeling white paint and overgrown lavender. I remember the woman at the agency, Angela, sounding surprised. "You're ready to move forward already? Most people at your level look for something more elevated." I smiled gently through the phone. "I'm not most people." That afternoon I wandered back into the villa. The silence clung to the walls like perfume. I drifted from room to room, absorbing the stillness, committing the details to memory. Not because I'd miss it, but because I wanted to remember what not to want again. This place had never been mine. I lived in it, sure. I slept in Ethan's bed, used his kitchen, drank wine from crystal glasses he never touched. But it wasn't mine. It was a stage. I was an actress, paid to deliver the illusion of intimacy. The worst part, I had become good at it. Too good. I knew exactly when to smile, when to wear the perfume Sabrina used, when to let my hand linger on his shoulder. I memorized her favorite wine, her signature laugh, details pulled from fragments Ethan unconsciously dropped over time. I had folded myself into a copy of a woman I had never met. And now she was back to reclaim her place. I stood in front of the mirror in the master bedroom, staring at the reflection I had carefully curated. Loose waves, bare skin, a peachy tint on the lips. The image was immaculate, elegant, ethereal. But I no longer recognized her. I peeled off the silk robe, let it pool around my feet, and stepped into a pair of old cotton pajamas that had been buried at the back of my drawer for years. They smelled like lemongrass and detergent. Simple, clean, mine. Dinner that night was not a 5-course meal arranged by the chef Ethan hired. It was instant noodles. Spicy ones. I ate cross-legged on the floor, straight from the pot, feeling more full than I had in months. There's something about simplicity that makes you feel whole. I made a list on a napkin that evening. 1. Notify the housekeeper. No more visits needed after the 30th. 2. Cancel recurring luxury orders. Wine, skincare, linens. 3. Schedule movers for the 29th. 4. Buy a cat. That last one made me smile. I'd always wanted a cat. Something soft and independent. Something that didn't need me to be anyone but myself. I pictured it already, a white Persian, regal and aloof. Maybe I'd name her Duchess or Machi. Or even Sabrina, just for irony's sake. The idea made me laugh out loud, the sound echoing through the high ceilings like a bell. Felt good to laugh. Real, unscripted, from the gut. The next morning I brewed my own coffee, walked barefoot across the cold marble floor, and opened the balcony doors to let the wind rush in. The city beyond sparkled, unaware of my quiet rebellion. I didn't know if Ethan would show up again before the contract ended. And honestly, I didn't care. He had given me time, money, and temporary proximity. But what I had taken back was something more permanent. Myself. The villa had been polished to perfection for 3 years. Every flower arranged to mimic Sabrina's taste. Every room designed to remind Ethan of a girl he couldn't have. But now, for the first time, I began undecorating. I packed away the porcelain vases. The soft pink throws. The hand-painted wall art imported from France. I replaced them with nothing. The walls felt honest that way. I even threw out the skincare bottles with her initials etched into the lids. They weren't mine. They never were. In the middle of all this, the housekeeper, Mara, entered unannounced as usual and paused when she saw the packed boxes in the hallway. "You're really leaving?" "Yes," I replied, taping shut a box labeled books and stationery. "Even if he comes back?" "Especially if he comes back." She didn't argue. Just stood there, mouth pressed into a line, then turned and walked out without another word. I didn't blame her. Everyone in Ethan's life was a piece on his well-designed chessboard. Some people moved. Others watched. I had played both roles. But now I was stepping off the board. That night, I lay on the massive 4-poster bed with my phone in one hand and a real estate app open in the other. Not because I needed more property, but because dreaming felt good. Healthy. I found a hammock I wanted to hang in my new yard. A fire pit I could build by hand. Maybe even a small herb garden. Basil. Rosemary. Mint. My future had texture. Not marble floors and cold white wine, but sunlight, pet fur, soil under my nails. I didn't hear from Ethan that night. Or the next. Or the next. But for once I didn't feel like I was waiting. My days became quiet, gentle, ordinary. I cooked my own meals. Played old vinyl records. I even danced barefoot across the living room one evening, arms above my head, hair loose and wild. The woman I had become in this house was dissolving. And the woman I was underneath, messy, soft, imperfect, was finally breathing again. By the 8th day I stopped wondering whether Ethan Cross would show up again. I stopped checking the door. I stopped hesitating every time my phone buzzed. The man who used to walk in at all hours, always sure I'd be waiting, had vanished the moment Sabrina Hayes returned. Good. Let her have him. I'd started a new morning ritual. Coffee in a chipped blue mug I liked better than all the bone china in the cabinet, baggy pajamas with cat faces on them, and a rotation of spicy noodle bowls I'd spent 3 years denying myself for fear of bloating and breakouts. The old Clara, his Clara, only drank room temperature water with lemon slices and nibbled on grilled sea bass over quinoa. She wore silk robes, curled her lashes every morning, and dabbed floral perfume on her wrists like she was always ready to be kissed. The new Clara? She lounged in bunny slippers, dared to eat greasy food while binge-watching home renovation videos, and for the first time in years felt like herself. That night I ordered an absurd amount of takeout. Fried dumplings, hot pot with extra chili, milk tea with 3 toppings, and a suspicious-looking cup of mango pudding that I would probably regret later. The food arrived quickly, filling the villa with mouth-watering smells. I laid it all out on the coffee table and took a deep, satisfied breath. He wouldn't come. Not tonight. Probably not ever again. I had accepted that. Halfway through slurping my noodles, I opened a virtual tour on my phone. The latest listing showed a cozy countryside home with a wraparound porch and creaky wood floors. A little worn but charming. I could see it already. Me in a rocking chair, a cat purring on my lap, the world blissfully quiet. I was mid-daydream, chopsticks paused in midair, when the villa's security door clicked open. I froze. No one else had the code. No one except. The door swung inward. Cold air swept in. A tall figure stepped through, brushed the drizzle off his shoulders, and kicked off his polished shoes like he hadn't been gone for over a week. Ethan Cross. He looked around, his gaze scanning the scene in front of him. Me sitting cross-legged in oversized sweats, surrounded by empty food containers. A virtual house tour paused on my phone. The spicy hot pot bubbling gently between us like it belonged there. I didn't move. I couldn't. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted. He raised an eyebrow and didn't answer. Just shut the door behind him as casually as if he'd never left. Due to muscle memory or maybe old habit, I swallowed the words I wanted to say. Words like you chose her or you're late. But I was trained better than that. For 3 years I had perfected the art of pretending nothing hurt me. I sat up straighter and pushed a few containers aside. Hungry? I ordered enough to feed a small army. He didn't answer. Instead he walked forward, eyes never leaving my face. Or maybe not my face. Maybe the parts of me that no longer looked the way he remembered. The unkempt bun, the bare skin, the smudge of chili oil near my mouth. Ethan looked unsettled. His gaze dropped to the food. Then back to me. What is all this? He asked finally, his tone unreadable. Dinner, I said simply. He frowned. It looks like a disaster zone. I offered a sugary smile. That's the vibe I'm going for now. Post-apocalyptic comfort. He didn't smile back. Why did you come back? I asked quietly, still not moving. He didn't answer right away. Just kept staring like I'd become someone he didn't recognize. I didn't expect to find you like this, he said at last, tone clipped. Like what? I tilted my head. Alive? Relaxed? Eating carbs? His frown deepened. You're not even wearing makeup. Scandalous, isn't it? He ran a hand through his hair, visibly agitated. You've let yourself go. Thank you, I said brightly. It's been liberating. You were always so well kept. Because you required it. Silence. Dense. You said the contract was performance-based, I reminded him. You were paying for perfection. So I gave it to you. Every day. For 3 years. Ethan's jaw flexed. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. I exhaled slowly. You just never said it out loud. He walked over to the window, the one with the sheer white curtains I had steamed every week because his taste required soft feminine ambience. You know Sabrina's back, he said without turning around. I leaned back on my elbows, letting the words land like a pebble in a pond. No ripple. No reaction. Yes, I said calmly. I figured that out when my weekly reserved dress was suddenly gifted to someone named Hayes. He turned to face me again, eyes narrowing. So you're angry? I shook my head. I'm free. That made him pause. I've already bought a house, I continued, watching his reaction. In Brookshore. With a yard. It has a giant tree, Ethan. The kind of tree you don't find in high-rises or penthouses. I'm going to get a cat. He blinked. A cat. Yes. A cat. Possibly named Princess Marshmallow. You're serious? Deadly. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Crossed his arms, uncrossed them. This isn't how I wanted things to end, he said at last. I chuckled. You mean with me eating instant noodles and watching house tours while you waltz in unannounced? I meant with you disappearing. I sat up, picking up a dumpling. I'm not disappearing. I'm reclaiming. He stared at me like I was speaking in riddles. Ethan, I said softly, you didn't come back for me. You came back to find the version of me who looked like Sabrina. The one who ironed your shirts and wore lip gloss even when no one was watching. That's not true. Isn't it? He stepped forward, close enough that I could smell the familiar scent of his cologne, clean cedar and arrogance. I don't like seeing you like this, he muttered. Good, I replied, popping the dumpling into my mouth. He stared at me like he'd never seen me chew before. Have you gained weight? I smiled and reached for another bite. 1 or 2 pounds of freedom. You should try it sometime. That finally earned a laugh. Quiet. Confused. You're different, he said, watching me carefully. I'm just not pretending anymore. He sat down across from me slowly, as though the coffee table between us were sacred ground. And if I told you I didn't want you to go? I'd say it's too late to remember that now. His jaw clenched. You're still under contract. For 22 more days. But you haven't shown up in 8. I thought we were calling it early. He leaned forward slightly. You always used to wait for me. I met his gaze evenly. I used to believe you might choose me. A beat of silence. Then he asked quietly, and now? Now I know you already did. He looked stricken. I stood up, brushing crumbs from my lap, and began gathering the food containers. I'll clean it up, I said, heading toward the kitchen. But just as I stepped away, he reached out and touched my arm. Lightly. Barely. I paused. Clara, he said, I didn't expect this. I know, I whispered without turning. You expected a stand-in. But I grew into something more. And then I walked away. I used to think nothing could surprise me anymore. Not after 3 years of pretending to be someone else for a man who never truly looked at me. But there are moments, sharp, cruel, quiet ones, that still manage to strike when you least expect. It was a Monday when it happened. The sky was overcast, the air sticky with impending rain. I had just returned from Brookshore, where I'd finalized the landscaping plans for my soon-to-be home. The front yard would have lavender bushes. The back, a patch of grass for my future cat to roam. I was excited, exhausted, and ready to collapse on the couch with a warm drink. As I pulled into the driveway of the villa, something felt off. The gate was open. I never left it that way. I stepped out of the car slowly, unease prickling along the back of my neck. Maybe the housekeeper came early? Oh. Mara always texted first. Then I saw her. Just a flash. A figure slipping through the front door of the villa, graceful and poised. Her silhouette was unmistakable even from behind. The long black hair. The slender frame. The way she walked like she owned every room before even entering it. Sabrina Hayes. I stopped mid-step, staring as she disappeared into the villa without hesitation. Not a thief. Not a guest. A woman who believed she belonged there. My fingers curled at my sides. There were no thieves in Eastfall Heights. Not the kind that wore heels and designer trench coats and punched in security codes like they'd never forgotten them. I walked to the front door and entered quietly, the click of my heels swallowed by the hush of the marble floor. She was standing in the grand foyer, her hand still on the door handle, clearly surprised to see someone else inside. She turned slowly at the sound of my steps. And then we were face to face. The woman I had spent 3 years becoming. She was everything I'd imagined, graceful, composed, exuding elegance in every glance. But she looked at me as if I were something stuck to her shoe. Hello, I said calmly. What brings you here? Her lips curved, not into a smile but something else. Smugness maybe. You must be Clara, she said, voice silky. It's nice to finally meet my stand-in. I raised a brow. You're remarkably confident for someone entering a house that isn't hers. Her eyes sparkled with amusement. That's where you're wrong. This house, Ethan bought it for me. I'm simply returning home. I let that sit for a moment. Let the silence wrap around us like tension tightening a rope. Interesting, I replied. Then I must have gotten terribly lost. I've been living here for years and yet somehow, I missed the part where I was trespassing. Sabrina walked further in, heels clicking like a declaration of war. You must know by now, Clara. Ethan never planned to keep you. Yes, I said lightly, but he did keep me around for 3 years. Her gaze sharpened. I saw the flicker of irritation before she masked it again. I'm not here to fight with you, she said coolly. I came to give you a little advice. Woman to oi placeholder. I smiled sweetly. I'm all ears. You should leave early, she said. You don't belong in this world. Ethan doesn't love you. He never did. I tilted my head. You think I don't know that? Sabrina blinked. I took a slow step forward, calm and unshaken. I was never confused about what this arrangement was. You were gone. He needed someone to look at. To keep the bed warm. To carry on the illusion. And you were happy to be his illusion? She snapped. No, I said softly. But I was paid for it. That silenced her. She folded her arms, trying a different tactic. Look, I'm not here to gloat. I'm simply trying to spare you more embarrassment. Ethan and I were inevitable. He's always loved me. And yet, I mused. He came back to a villa where I was wearing pajamas and eating hot pot instead of running to you. That must sting. Her face twitched. I walked to the bench by the stairs, removed my shoes and sighed. If you're planning on sharing the bed tonight, let me know. I'll change the sheets for you. Sabrina's composure cracked for a split second. She hadn't expected that. I came here to be civil, she said, voice tighter now. But clearly you're enjoying playing house a bit too much. I was paid to play house, I replied. But I ended up turning it into a home. The coffee stains on the rug. The chipped mug Ethan pretends not to notice? Also mine. And that vase near the window? I threw that at the wall when he missed your birthday again last year. She stared at me, unsure if I was joking. I wasn't. She turned away, trying to reassert control. You can keep pretending you mattered. But deep down you know this is over. I do, I said with a nod. That's why I've already packed most of my things. He spun back toward me. Except, I added thoughtfully, the contract doesn't expire for another 3 weeks. If I leave now, I lose the breakup compensation. You're seriously staying for the money? I shrugged. Why not? You stayed gone for the money, didn't you? Sabrina flinched. For all her elegance, her eyes narrowed like a cornered cat. You're pathetic. I smiled gently. Perhaps. But I'm also well compensated. She scoffed, walking toward the stairs. Don't get too comfortable. Ethan is mine. He always has been. I walked past her on my way to the kitchen, pausing just beside her. Then why are you here talking to me instead of him? Her lips parted, but no words came. I continued down the hall, leaving her to stew in silence. By the time I reached the kitchen, my hands were trembling. Not with fear. With adrenaline. For 3 years, I had been living in the shadow of a woman I'd never met. Now she had a face, a voice, a scent. But she was not invincible. And I was not invisible. I poured myself a glass of cold water, sipping slowly to steady my nerves. From the hallway, I heard her heels clicking back toward the front door. A few moments later, it opened and shut again. She left without slamming it. Of course she did. Ladies like her never slam doors. They smile while they close them quietly, believing they've won. I walked back into the foyer and stared at the now empty entrance. It didn't feel like defeat. It felt like clarity. She was here. He was real. She was everything Ethan had chased for a decade. And I was the substitute who had somehow made a home out of the pieces he left behind. The rain began just after she left. Gentle at first, then faster. I stood by the window watching droplets trail down the glass, and wondered if Ethan even knew she had come by. I doubted it. Sabrina might have elegance and poise, but she lacked subtlety. If she had wanted him to know she confronted me, she'd have made sure he was watching. I wondered for the briefest moment if she was afraid I'd say no. Afraid I'd choose not to go. Afraid that Ethan might hesitate. I turned away from the window and walked up the stairs barefoot. Let her be afraid. There's a special kind of tension that exists only between two women who refuse to fight with fists. Our war was waged in eye rolls, micro-smiles, and perfectly timed insults disguised as compliments. We didn't shout. We didn't pull hair. We smiled. We sat across from each other and picked up knives with our words. Sabrina Hayes didn't leave after that first encounter. I had assumed she'd sweep in, declare herself victorious, and then vanish into some penthouse with Ethan's full attention. Glad she stayed. Not with Ethan full-time, at least not yet, but she made her presence known. A coffee cup left in the sink. A lipstick smudge on the upstairs bathroom mirror. Her perfume clinging to the throw blanket I'd kept folded on the armrest for 3 years. She was making herself comfortable in a house I had scrubbed down, dressed up, and made livable. And yet, she wasn't confronting me directly anymore. No threats. No smug lectures. Just a slow and steady occupation of the spaces I once filled. So I matched her energy. With interest. Every morning I came downstairs impeccably dressed. Not in the elegant neutrals she favored, but in bold reds, sharp silhouettes, and heels that clicked a little too loudly against the marble floor. I wore lip gloss that stained teacups and spicy perfume that lingered for hours. I played jazz instead of soft classical, cooked with garlic instead of rosemary, and started hosting fictional phone calls with imaginary designers just to irritate her. She started coming by more often. "You're really good at keeping yourself entertained," she said one day, seated gracefully on the white sofa, legs crossed. I handed her a cup of tea, the kind Ethan liked but she hated. "I've had years of practice." Her eyes sparkled with false politeness. So you really plan to stay until the contract expires? I sipped my tea. Of course. Walking away now would be unprofessional. I'm nothing if not professional. Sabrina's smile was strained. Is it really about professionalism, or are you just afraid of what's waiting for you once you leave this place? I smiled wider. Freedom? A cat named Princess Marshmallow? I can hardly wait. She laughed softly. I suppose you'll miss Ethan. I looked her directly in the eyes. No. But I'll miss the dumb things I let myself believe because of him. That shut her up for a moment. The worst part about being civil enemies is that you can't escape them. You see them everywhere. In the hallway, brushing past you like it's perfectly natural. In the kitchen, reaching for the same mug you just put down. In the garden, trimming roses like she'd been tending them for years. One night, I returned home from Brookshore to find her in my kitchen, barefoot, flipping pancakes. I raised a brow. Domestic bliss? She turned with a bright smile. Ethan mentioned he missed his mother's recipe. I thought I'd surprise him. I glanced at the pan. You're using the wrong flour. She blinked. Excuse me. His mother used almond flour. He's allergic to wheat. Sabrina stiffened. I walked to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of lemon water and grinned. But please do surprise him. I'd love to see how it ends. The passive-aggressive warfare escalated slowly but surely. She started replacing my tea with hers. I swapped it back and added cayenne pepper to one for good measure. She rearranged the bathroom toiletries. I glued them in place with a hot glue gun. She played soft love songs on the speakers. I followed up with death metal. She left notes on the fridge addressed to E with hearts. I left grocery receipts itemized to the cent under Miss Wynn's contractual purchases. By the second week, Ethan had clearly noticed the shift in atmosphere. But instead of intervening, he acted like he was walking through a minefield with noise-canceling headphones on. Maybe he thought if he ignored it long enough, one of us would just disappear. To his credit, he tried to smooth things over once. I was thinking, he said one night over dinner. Maybe you two should talk. I stabbed my salad. We're already talking. Civilly. Often. He gave me a look. It feels more like Cold War negotiations. Sabrina sipped her wine. I think Claire is just struggling to accept the situation. I smiled brightly. Which situation? That I was paid to be you, or that you left him so long ago I forgot what your voice sounded like until recently? Ethan choked on his drink. Sabrina's jaw clenched. You always were very good at twisting things. And you, I said, leaning forward, were very good at abandoning them. Silence stretched like taut string between us. Ethan stood abruptly. I need some air. He left the room in a rush, leaving the two of us at the table like characters in a black comedy. Sabrina set her fork down. You're very good at pushing his buttons. I shrugged. 3 years of training. She leaned forward. He'll come back to me. He always does. I tilted my head. Then why haven't you told him to make me leave? Her face froze. I continued, if you're so confident, why haven't you demanded it? You're not the type to tolerate competition. Sabrina's gaze narrowed. Maybe I want you to see it happen. I stood and carried my plate to the sink, my smile never wavering. Maybe I'm staying just to see how long you can pretend you're still the girl he once loved. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. That night, I found her in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror with the same kind of desperation I'd worn so many times in the past. Her eyes were tired. Her lips pressed too tightly together. For a split second I didn't hate her. We were two women clawing at the same man for different reasons. Me for survival, her for ego. I had no illusions anymore. But she still believed there was a prize to win. Later that week I invited a few friends over. Real ones. Not paid socialites or Ethan's acquaintances. Women who laughed loudly and ate greasy pizza and spilled soda on the white rug without a trace of guilt. Sabrina watched us from the stairs, disgust written across her face. I waved up at her with a slice of pepperoni in hand. You're welcome to join, I called out sweetly. He didn't. The next morning she rearranged the entire living room while I was out. I didn't even blink. Just moved it all back and added a hideous flamingo statue to the center of the coffee table. We were at war. And I was no longer playing defense. 3 days before the contract expired, Sabrina cornered me in the hallway. You're still here. Sharp observation. She exhaled slowly. I used to think you were pathetic. A woman with no pride, willing to be a substitute for money. I said. But now I'm just a woman who stayed long enough to outlast your illusions. You really think he cares about you? I met her gaze evenly. I don't need him to care. I only need to leave with peace of mind and a fat payout. That seemed to shake her more than anything I'd said before. Sabrina thought I wanted Ethan. That I was clinging to him. That this was some sad little competition. But I had already won. Not because I had him. Because I no longer wanted him. That evening, while Sabrina played the piano in the parlor, no doubt some melancholy melody designed to remind Ethan of their long-lost past, I sat on the balcony with a beer in one hand and a list of cat names in the other. Princess Marshmallow. Duchess Tuna. Judge Fluffington. By the time the sun set, I'd added Queen Betrayance to the shortlist. Downstairs the music stopped. A soft laugh drifted up, followed by Ethan's deeper one. I didn't care what they were laughing about. I had stopped listening. The next day I walked into the city and bought a new suitcase. Not because I needed more luggage, but because I wanted something that hadn't lived in his house. I wheeled it back home, past Sabrina on the stairs, and smiled without saying a word. She looked at the bag. Then at me. Her lips parted like she might say something. But in the end she just stepped aside. For once she didn't have anything left to say. It happened on a Wednesday. The sky had been teasing rain all morning. Gray clouds sat stubborn and swollen, casting long shadows across the windows. Inside the villa, everything was unnervingly quiet. Sabrina hadn't come downstairs yet and Ethan was off somewhere. Meetings, calls, obligations I no longer cared to know about. I had the house to myself. Or so I thought. It started with a door left slightly ajar. I was carrying fresh laundry down the hallway, passing the guest room Ethan never used until recently. The room he had quietly begun preparing without explanation. That door had always stayed closed. Till now. I paused. Only for a second. Just long enough to hear the unmistakable sound of a soft laugh, followed by a deeper chuckle I recognized too well. Ethan. Sabrina. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there like a ghost, listening to two living people speak freely in a house I'd been haunting for 3 years. You kept the mirror I gave you, Sabrina said, her voice delicate but smug. It never felt right to take it down, Ethan replied. My throat tightened. You always said you hated clutter, she continued. He chuckled again. I made room for one thing. Pause. Maybe now I'll make room for more. I closed my eyes. It wasn't the words that hurt. It was the familiarity, the ease between them. I had seen Ethan relaxed before but never like this. Never so open. So unguarded. He was speaking like a man who'd just remembered what it felt like to be young and in love. I missed this, Sabrina whispered. He didn't answer out loud. I didn't need to hear it. The silence was its own reply. I turned away before I could hear more. Before it could twist further into my ribs. I walked, glided, back to my room like I was in a dream. The laundry still in my hands, my heartbeat somewhere near my throat. That was the moment it clicked. Not when she walked in the door. Not when she sipped from his coffee cup or started humming her favorite songs in the hallway. Not when she replaced my face in the reflection of his gaze. It was now. Now when I realized the game had ended and I'd just been lingering on the board because I didn't want to admit I'd lost. Had I really lost? No. What I had lost was the illusion. And with it, the burden of pretending. I dropped the laundry basket on the bed and sat down slowly, like my bones had aged 50 years in 5 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad. I felt done. That evening I ordered my favorite hot pot from a restaurant in town, the kind loaded with chili oil and garlic and flavor that Ethan had always hated because it left the house smelling too lived in. I sprawled on the couch, hair tied up, wearing the hoodie that still smelled like comfort. No makeup. No earrings. No polite posture. Just Clara Wynne. I opened the food delivery app and placed another order. For snacks, wine, cake. If I was going to say goodbye to this chapter, I would do it the way I came in. Extravagantly. While I waited, I scrolled through my phone, checking the final documents from the Brookshore house. The renovation was complete. The backyard had been landscaped. The tree in the yard, the one I had imagined rocking under, had been trimmed and lit with fairy lights. The realtor sent me a picture. It looked like something out of a dream. My dream. And for once it was all mine. When the food arrived, I devoured it with unashamed joy. Oil dripped down my wrist, chili seeds clung to my lips, and I didn't care. I chewed with my mouth full, burped once, then laughed so hard I nearly tipped the wine glass over. Somewhere between my second bowl and third glass, I pulled out my phone again and clicked open a blank note. I titled it, "To Clara from Clara." And I wrote, "You did good, sweetheart. You held your head high. You smiled when it hurt. You learned how to laugh again. And you never, ever, let them see you break. You're almost there. One more week. And then you get to be free." I hit save and set the phone aside. Then I curled up on the couch, belly full, eyelids heavy, heart quiet. And I slept. The next day I began packing in earnest. Not just the perfunctory tossing of things into suitcases like I had before. No. This was the real purge. The sorting of a life built in limbo. I started in the bedroom. The dresses I wore to match Sabrina's aesthetic? Gone. I folded them with care and set them aside to donate. The delicate heels, the silk nightgowns, the neutral-toned accessories into boxes labeled unclaimed. I wouldn't take a single reminder of that version of me. What I did pack were my soft knits, my worn jeans, my clunky sneakers that made me feel like I could run. I moved next to the vanity. I stared at the perfume bottles lined up like soldiers, each one chosen to mimic her. The blush pinks. The gardenia heavy notes. The delicate rosewater Ethan claimed reminded him of something familiar. I picked them up one by one and dumped them down the bathroom sink. The sharp scent hit me like a storm. But it wasn't guilt. It wasn't nostalgia. It was relief. I tossed the empty bottles in the trash and lit a cheap vanilla candle I found in the back of the closet. The villa never smelled like me before. But now it did. Later that afternoon Ethan came home. Alone. He paused in the entryway, scanning the living room where boxes were neatly stacked. He didn't say anything for a long time. I stayed seated on the couch, cradling a cup of tea. "You're packing," he said eventually. I nodded. "Time flies." He stepped further in. "You still have, what? 5 days left." "I like to get ahead of schedule." Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets. "You don't have to rush." "I'm not." He looked at the boxes again. "You're really going?" "Yes." Silence stretched between us. Then he asked quietly, "Why now?" I set the cup down and stood. Walked over to him. Stopped just short of touching distance. "You chose her," I said softly. "And that's okay. But I choose me." His eyes searched my face. For what, I don't know. Regret? Emotion? A crack in the armor? But I gave him none. "You said once that you didn't want it to end like this," I added. "But this is exactly how it needed to end. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said. "But you did." He opened his mouth then closed it. There was nothing left to say. I turned away and returned to my boxes. He left without another word. That night I opened a bottle of wine and poured myself a single glass. I sat on the back patio and stared up at the sky, tracing constellations in my mind. Somewhere in Brookshore, a string of fairy lights flickered beneath a tree that was waiting for me. A quiet home. A cat with a ridiculous name. A life I hadn't borrowed from anyone. It was all there. Just one last chapter left to close. And in the morning I'd start writing something new. When Sabrina Hayes invited me to coffee, I knew it was a trap. She texted me in the morning like we were old friends catching up. "Want to grab a coffee? There's a sweet little place near the park." My treat. No explanation. No apology. No pretense of civility this time. So I went. Because sometimes the most satisfying part of war isn't the victory. It's watching your enemy underestimate you for the last time. The cafe she chose was one of those minimalist boutique places. You know the kind, 3 tables all white with overpriced espresso and staff who judged your outfit before you ordered. I arrived early on purpose. I wanted to see how she would approach me in public, away from Ethan's gaze, without the security of their shared past holding her steady. She entered 10 minutes later, floating in like she owned the air. Classic Sabrina. Oversized sunglasses, a camel-colored trench coat, silk scarf draped perfectly around her neck. She pulled them off one by one, revealing her perfectly painted face and a smile that had all the warmth of a winter draft. "Clara," she greeted smoothly, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thanks for coming." I set my phone down and leaned back. "You made it sound urgent. I figured someone was dying." She laughed lightly. Not quite. But maybe someone's future is. A waiter approached. She waved him off with the grace of someone used to being obeyed. Light extra hot, she said, then looked at me. Clara prefers cappuccino. She's still new to coffee. The waiter turned to me politely, but I smiled without looking at him. Actually, I'll have a dirty chai. Double shot. His brow lifted in surprise before nodding. Coming right up. Sabrina's eyebrows arched. Switching things up? I like to try new things, I replied evenly. Makes life exciting. She stirred her spoon in the air absent-mindedly. Ethan always said you were adaptable. That's what made you a good fit. I smirked. Funny. He always told me I was unlike anyone else. Her fingers stiffened slightly on the spoon. Maybe he meant unlike her. Maybe he meant unlike you. Silence hummed between us as the waiter returned with our drinks. Mine came with a cinnamon stick. Hers with foam art that looked like a broken heart. How poetic. She took a delicate sip, watching me over the rim. Let's stop pretending, she said finally. You're almost out of time. The contract ends in what? 4 days. 3. Her lips curled. And you're still pretending this isn't difficult for you? I tilted my head. It's not difficult, Sabrina. It's liberating. He gave me a long, pitying look. You keep telling yourself that. I do, I said calmly. Right after I check my bank balance and confirm I'm walking away from this with my dignity, my savings, and my sanity. Her smile faltered. You don't get it, she said sharply. You were temporary. A bandage. He never meant for you to stay. And yet I did, I replied, longer than you. Her face hardened. As I chose to leave. I had options. And now you're here, sitting across from me, making sure I'm leaving so you can crawl back into the spot I warmed up for you. Her voice dropped. You're nothing to him. And yet you're here to remind me of that, I whispered, because you need it to be true. We sat in silence again. This time it was her that broke. I could have had him back the moment I snapped my fingers, she said. I didn't need to do this. I raised an eyebrow. Then why are we here, Sabrina? She didn't answer. Not directly. Instead she reached forward, fast, and knocked her latte over. It spilled in a perfect arc across the table, splattering her blouse, staining her coat, running toward my side like a snake with fangs. The waiter rushed over in a panic, napkins flying. I leaned back, dry and amused. Sabrina gasped dramatically, standing halfway. Oh, I'm so sorry, she exclaimed, loud enough for the few customers in the cafe to look our way. It must have been the table, so unstable. Her eyes darted toward the security camera above. And I understood. He was setting me up. I was meant to look like the aggressor. The jealous ex-stand-in. The woman who snapped in public because she couldn't handle being replaced. Maybe even to make Ethan doubt me, question my character one last time. I stood slowly, brushing myself off even though I hadn't been touched. The waiter apologized profusely. Sabrina dabbed her collar with napkins, playing the victim with Oscar-worthy commitment. I waited. Then I turned to the waiter with a smile. Actually, I'd like to cover the bill. He blinked. Of course, miss. I pulled Ethan's black card from my purse, my last use of it, and handed it over. Sabrina looked up sharply. No need. I cut her off gently. I insist. After all, this is the last coffee I'll ever have on behalf of Ethan Cross. The waiter nodded and stepped away. I looked at her. You almost had me, I said quietly. But you forgot one thing. She tilted her head, wary. I'm not you. I don't have to destroy people to feel secure. Her eyes narrowed. Are you implying? I smiled. Nothing. Just reminding you. Coffee stains wash out, but desperation? That lingers. I turned and left the cafe, chin high, coat unbuttoned. The cold wind greeted me like an old friend. That night Ethan came home earlier than usual. He found me in the living room finishing the last box. The villa was bare now. Every trace of me packed, donated, or burned. All that remained was my coat by the door and my suitcase beside it. He stood in the doorway for a long time watching. I heard you met Sabrina today, he said. I nodded. She invited me for coffee. He hesitated. She said, you threw a drink at her. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. And did she also tell you she knocked over her own drink and made sure the camera caught it from just the right angle? Ethan frowned. What? She's clever. I'll give her that. I zipped my suitcase. But I don't have time for games anymore, Ethan. He stepped closer. Why would she? I looked up. Because she needs to believe I'm the problem. That I'm the reason you're not jumping at the chance to take her back. His expression shifted. She thinks there's still something between us, I said. There's not. He looked. Is there? Waiting. There's not. I said. You're free to go back to her, I added. To the life you paused 3 years ago. No strings. No guilt. You're really leaving, he murmured. I was never staying. He walked to the window, back turned to me. You're not who I thought you were. Neither are you, I replied. He turned, finally meeting my gaze. There were moments, he said, where I forgot you weren't her. There were moments, I said, where I forgot I wasn't. He flinched. Just a little. And that's how I knew I'd hit the truth. I picked up my coat. As I opened the door, I looked back at him one last time. And with that, I stepped out into the night. The villa echoed behind me as I walked away. There was final day to go. I wandered instead. Through quiet streets lit by soft orange glow, past strangers laughing inside cafes, through neighborhoods where no one knew who I was, or who I had pretended to be. I ended up in a bar on the corner of 9th and Ashmore. The kind of place where no one asked questions and the only music came from an old jukebox playing Elvis on repeat. It smelled like fried onions and whiskey and liberation. I ordered a whiskey sour, then another. Then a third. By the fourth, the weight of everything I hadn't said in 3 years started pressing against my chest. The waitress looked at me cautiously. You okay? I nodded. I'm just exhaling. He brought me water anyway. I drank it slowly, staring at the scratched wooden table, my reflection warped in the gloss. And then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I cried. Not delicate tears. Not the kind that could be dabbed away with a monogrammed napkin. Real tears. Ugly, messy, unfiltered grief that I'd locked up behind pretty smiles and red lipstick, and I'm fine. Because I wasn't fine. I had been someone else for too long. A body that fit someone else's memory. A voice trained to say what wouldn't make waves. A substitute that got used and folded neatly away when the original was ready to return. But I had feelings. And tonight they refused to stay quiet. I don't remember calling him. But somehow I did. Somehow my fingers remembered his number. And less than an hour later, Ethan Cross walked into that bar. He looked completely out of place, suited, polished, sharp. And yet when he saw me at the corner booth, eyes red and lips stained with whiskey and regret, something inside him faltered. He approached cautiously. Clara. I blinked up at him, disoriented. Oh. You came. You called. I laughed. Mistake. He didn't sit down. Just hovered. Are you okay? Am I ever? I muttered, then waved vaguely toward the chair. Sit if you want. Or don't. Doesn't matter. He sat. I stared at my glass. You know what's funny? I asked, voice low. I used to love the idea of you. He didn't speak. I thought, maybe if I was good enough, soft enough, graceful enough, you'd eventually see me. Not her in me. Me. I did see you, he said. I laughed bitterly. No, Ethan. You saw comfort. Obedience. You saw a girl too scared to ask for more. His jaw clenched. That's not fair. You let me live in your house, sleep in your bed, wear her skin. And you called that not love, but you never corrected anyone when they assumed it was. I never made promises. I know. I snapped. You never promised me anything, and that's what makes it worse. You let me drown in maybes. And I clung to every single one like they were lifelines. He looked down. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't have to mean to, I said. You just did. Silence settled between us, sticky and raw. You asked me once what I wanted, I whispered. I lied. His eyes lifted to mine. I wanted you to choose me, I said. Even though I shouldn't have. Even though you didn't owe me that. Why didn't you say something? Because I was afraid that if I spoke it out loud, the illusion would end. I swallowed hard, tears burning again. But the illusion ended anyway, didn't it? He exhaled slowly. I didn't think you'd get this far under my skin. That makes two of us. We sat in silence again. I saw the footage, he said finally. I blinked. What footage? From the cafe. Sabrina's little performance. I got the raw feed. My stomach turned. And he leaned back, voice quieter now. I realized something. You didn't just walk away. You walked away with dignity. While she turned into someone I didn't recognize. I let that sink in. Slowly. Carefully. So what? I asked, bracing. You're here now because you changed your mind? I don't know why I'm here, he said honestly. I just know that when you called, I ran. That should have made me feel powerful. Validated. But it didn't. It made me tired. Because finally, painfully, I saw him clearly. He was still searching. Not for love. Not even for her. But for an anchor. For a woman who could make him feel like himself again. And I refused to be that mirror. I called you because I was drunk, I said. Not because I wanted you back. I know. And I'm still leaving. He nodded. I'm not someone's second choice, Ethan. He closed his eyes briefly. You never were. That's the problem, I said. You treated me like I was a first draft of someone else. Like I didn't matter unless I fit her mold. His voice cracked a little. I'm sorry. I know. He stood. So did I. We faced each other under the cheap neon glow. What now? He asked. I go to the villa one last night. He gave a small nod. Will I see you again? I thought about that. Really thought about it. No, I said softly. But you'll remember me. He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg. But I didn't wait. I turned and walked out of that bar into the damp night air, heart cracked wide open but finally whole. For the first time in 3 years I felt everything. And for the first time in forever. I let it all go. The sky was already soft with morning light when I returned to the villa. The streets were empty. The world felt paused. The birds weren't even awake yet. It was the last night I would ever sleep in that house and I hadn't slept at all. I walked in quietly as if the walls might protest my presence. My heels didn't click. My keys didn't jingle. Everything felt too still. Like even the marble was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd really go through with it this time. I stood in the entryway for a moment. This place had seen me in every version. Powdered and perfect, furious and fractured, loving, leaving and now, letting go. I made my way upstairs, past the spare guest room where Ethan and Sabrina had quietly taken refuge in recent weeks. The door was closed. Let it stay closed. I opened my own door, the master bedroom that never truly felt like mine, and stepped in to find it exactly how I'd left it. Neat. Bare. All the softness I'd added over the years, the lavender candles, the bedside books, the cozy rug, were already packed or donated. Just a mattress. A single lamp. A suitcase by the wall. I changed into my oldest sweater and sat on the bed. Just until sunrise I told myself. I wouldn't cry this time. And I didn't. Because it was over. By 8 in the morning the moving van had arrived. 2 cheerful men loaded the final boxes with an ease that made the whole thing feel surreal. Like I wasn't leaving the man I'd given 3 years to. Like I was just relocating. I'll meet you in Brookshore, I told them. Drive safe. I signed the last delivery form and stood alone in the driveway, staring up at the house one last time. I didn't expect anything dramatic. No parting speeches. No dramatic rainstorm. No regrets clawing at my ankles. I just wanted to go. But of course, the universe had other plans. The moment I opened my car door I heard it. Clara. I turned slowly. Then, running. No jacket. No shoes. Just a t-shirt and joggers, breathless, like he'd been sprinting from the ends of the earth to catch me before I disappeared. Clara, wait. I leaned against the car door, arms folded. You're cutting it close. He stopped a few feet away, hands on his knees, panting. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I raised a brow. Then you haven't been paying attention. He straightened, stepping closer. Don't go. Not yet. My heart stuttered. Not because I believed him, but because part of me still wanted to. Old habits die hard. I'm already gone, Ethan, I said quietly. I just haven't driven away yet. He shook his head. You don't understand. I've been up all night. I can't stop thinking about that night in the bar. About the things you said. I meant every word. I know. His voice cracked. That's what scares me. I didn't answer. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know when it changed. Maybe it was slow. Maybe it was that day I found you eating hot pot in bunny slippers. Or when I saw you hold your ground against Sabrina without raising your voice. But somewhere along the way you stopped being her replacement. And you became, you. Too little too late, I said, voice steady. No. Don't say that. Why not? I stepped closer now. You had 3 years to see me. You had hundreds of breakfasts, thousands of glances. And all I ever was to you was a shadow of a woman who didn't stay. I see you now. I laughed, soft, bitter. Now that I'm leaving? Now that she's returned and shown you who she really is? Now that I no longer want you? He flinched. I exhaled slowly. Do you love me, Ethan? He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. Don't answer that. Because it doesn't matter anymore. Even if you did, it would be a love that came after. After I stopped waiting. After I stopped begging to be seen. I was afraid, he said, voice raw. You reminded me of her at first and I hated how much I liked you. Then when I realized you weren't her, it scared me even more. I looked at him, really looked. And I didn't see the man I'd once waited for like a sunrise. I saw a man grasping for something he didn't know how to hold. I'm not your redemption story, Ethan, I whispered. And I won't be the woman you love out of guilt. He stepped closer. Please don't go like this. I'm not angry anymore. Then stay. I'm not staying either. He reached for me then. His hand grazed mine. For a heartbeat I let it. Then I pulled away. I got in the car, shut the door and rolled down the window. I wish you well, I said. Truly. But I hope the next woman you love doesn't have to become someone else to earn it. He stood there, silent, helpless. And I drove away. The road to Brookshore was lined with trees shedding golden leaves. The wind rustled through them like it was clapping quietly for my exit. I didn't cry this time. Instead, I sang along to a cheesy 90s pop song. Loud. Off-key. Joyful. I was going home. Not to a man. Not to a contract. To myself. When I reached my house, the moving truck had already arrived. The movers were unloading my boxes, stacking them in the front hallway, commenting on the fairy lights tree in the backyard. I paid them, tipped them generously, and thanked them for being part of this day. Then I shut the door. And I stood in the middle of my new living room. It smelled like paint and possibility. The kitchen was small but bright. The living room had a window seat. My bedroom overlooked the garden. The tree I loved swayed gently in the afternoon breeze as if waving hello. I unpacked slowly, deliberately. Books first. Then my favorite mugs. Then the framed photo of me on a beach from years ago when I was sunburnt and smiling and real. By sunset I had made the place mine. I curled up on the couch, lit a vanilla candle and opened a carton of ice cream. No makeup. No drama. No ghosts. Just me. The woman who once accepted being a substitute. But walked away before she forgot who she was. A week passed like a breath. Then another. And another. Each morning I woke up not to luxury linens or echoing marble floors, but to the soft creak of my wooden floorboards, the scent of vanilla from the candle I left burning too long, and the quiet purring of the stray kitten I'd adopted from a shelter on a whim. Her name was Duchess Marshmallow. She was the only one who saw me cry when I unpacked my last box. Brookshore was nothing like Eastfall Heights, but that was the point. No security gates. No designer boutiques. Just corner bookstores, thrift shops with hidden gems, and neighbors who waved from their porches like they meant it. For the first time in 3 years I wasn't needed. I wasn't dressed up. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was just Clara Wynne. And I liked her. I spent the first 2 weeks nesting. Rearranging furniture. Painting the guest room a defiant shade of yellow. Buying plants I'd probably forget to water. Every corner of the house started to feel like mine. The front porch had a rocking chair. The back patio had fairy lights. And in the evenings I'd sit with a glass of wine and tell Duchess all about my day like she was my therapist. She listened better than Ethan ever had. It was on a lazy Wednesday afternoon that I ran into Lucas Reed again. He was the last person I expected to see standing at the front counter of Brookshore Books, holding a paperback titled, How to Pot a Bonsai Tree Without Killing It. I blinked at him, unsure if it was really him, or if I'd inhaled too much paint the night before. He looked up from the book. Clara Wynne. I froze. Lucas. A slow grin spread across his face. Well. The infamous ghost of the Cross estate. I rolled my eyes. Please don't call me that. Sorry. Couldn't resist. Lucas Reed. Ethan's longtime business rival. The man I'd seen only a handful of times at events, always sharp, observant, a little too clever. He had once whispered to me at a gala, "You smile like you're being paid to." And I had. But here he was dressed down in jeans and a navy Henley, sleeves pushed up, hair slightly tousled, like someone who lived in the real world. "What brings you to Brookshore?" I asked. "My sister lives here," he said, holding up the bonsai book. "Her latest hobby. I'm her unwilling accomplice." I laughed. "Explains the panic in your eyes." "You live here now?" he asked, stepping closer. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. Just moved." "On purpose?" "Very much on purpose." He studied me for a second. Not the way men usually did. There was no lingering glance, no judgment, just curiosity. "You look different," he said. "I am. Better." I blinked. That's the first compliment I've gotten in weeks. "Then Brookshore has terrible taste." We smiled. The moment stretched. He nodded toward the coffee shop across the street. "You free for a non-chaotic latte?" I considered it. Then I said, "Only if I can pick the playlist. I've had enough mood lighting and violins for a lifetime." The cafe was warm and a little loud, filled with mismatched furniture and indie music. It felt like a place where no one was pretending to be anything. We found a booth by the window. "So," Lucas said, sipping his espresso, "how's life after Ethan Cross?" I smirked. "Peaceful. Colorful. Poorer but happier. No lawsuits, I hope?" "Nope. We ended clean." "And Sabrina?" I sipped my tea. "Still allergic to sincerity, last I heard." He chuckled. "I always wondered why Ethan clung to her. She was the beginning of his story. I was just the comma." Lucas tilted his head. "I think you were the plot twist." I didn't know how to respond to that. So I changed the subject. "What about you? Still ruining him in boardrooms?" He grinned. "Only on Tuesdays. Wednesdays are for bonsai." We talked for hours. About real things. Stupid things. Ridiculous things. He told me about his failed cooking experiments. I told him about Duchess and how she declared war on my indoor fern. We laughed until the barista kicked us out for loitering. As we stepped into the evening air, Lucas looked at me like he was trying to remember something. "What?" I asked. "You're exactly the same," he said. "But completely different." I smiled. "You sound like a poem." He didn't reply. Just walked me to my car, hands in his pockets. As I opened the door, he said, "I hope I see you again." I shrugged playfully. "Buy the bonsai book. I'm sure fate will do the rest." He smiled. And I drove off into the night, heart oddly light. Over the next few weeks we kept running into each other. At the farmer's market. At the bookstore. At the park where Duchess made enemies with every squirrel. Sometimes it felt like coincidence. Other times, like something better. Lucas never asked about Ethan again. He never treated me like a scandal or a mystery. He just saw me. The new me. The unpolished, unguarded, stubborn me. And he liked her. I didn't fall for him quickly. Not this time. I took my time. I questioned everything. I protected the pieces I'd just started putting back together. But one night as we sat on my porch sipping wine, Duchess curled between us, I looked at him and realized something. I wasn't the substitute anymore. Not for Sabrina. Not for a dream. Not even for the version of myself I thought I had to be. I was just Clara. And for the first time, that was enough. It had been 3 months since I left Ethan Cross's world behind. 3 months since I packed my life into boxes, kissed a villa goodbye and stepped into the quiet rebellion of living for myself. I hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen her. And for a while I believed I never would. But fate, as always, has a wicked sense of humor. It came in the form of a charity gala. I'd been invited by Brookshore's local arts council. Something small, warm, earnest. Lucas was a board sponsor and insisted I attend with him. "You'll love it," he said, leaning across the porch one evening. "Live jazz, silent auction, too many tiny cupcakes." "I'm not really a gala girl anymore," I replied, petting Duchess, who had just swatted a leaf off the table. "You were never a real gala girl," he said with a knowing smirk. "You just wore the dress." Touché. So I said yes. I wore a deep green silk dress that flowed when I walked and made me feel like wind wrapped in starlight. My hair was down. No extensions. No fake lashes. Just me. Lucas whistled when I walked down the stairs. You sure you're not here to outshine the chandelier? Only slightly, I grinned. We arrived just after 7. The venue wasn't enormous like East Fall's marble halls, but it was elegant. Vaulted ceilings, candlelight, laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. I smiled as I entered. And then I stopped. Because there, across the room in a fitted black gown and $1,000 heels, was Sabrina Hayes. And beside her, hands in pockets, jaw tight, was Ethan. Lucas followed my gaze. "Ah. You knew?" I asked. "I found out this morning. Their foundation is co-sponsoring." I inhaled. "Do I look shaken?" "You look like the plot twist they weren't prepared for." I smirked. "Perfect." We mingled. We sipped champagne. We laughed at someone bidding $500 for a watercolor of a duck. And I pretended I didn't feel eyes on me. But I did. Ethan watched me all night. At first from across the room, then slowly, gradually, closer. Like a tide returning to a shore it didn't belong to anymore. It wasn't until I excused myself to view the silent auction items that he approached. "Clara." I turned slowly. He looked the same. Maybe a little more tired. A little less certain. I nodded once. "Ethan. You look..." He trailed off. I waited. "Happy," he finally said. "Really happy." "I am." He looked away for a moment. I thought about calling. Reaching out. "But you didn't," I said, voice gentle but firm. "No." "Why not?" "Because I didn't know what I would say." "No. I see I don't need to." He glanced over his shoulder. Sabrina stood by a cluster of socialites, sipping her drink too fast, laughing too loud. "She's not who I remembered," he said quietly. "No one is," I replied. "Not after time changes them." "She wanted to come tonight. Said we needed to be seen again. Together. And yet here you are. Talking to me." He gave a sad smile. "You were never about being seen. You were just there. Constant. Safe." I let out a breath. "I don't want to be anyone's safe. I want to be chosen. Loudly. Unapologetically. First. You deserve that." "I know," I said. "And now I give it to myself." He looked like he wanted to say more. Like he might apologize again or ask me if I ever missed him, or tell me something poetic about regrets. But he didn't. Because Lucas stepped beside me then, placing a warm hand on the small of my back. "Everything okay here?" he asked, voice smooth. Ethan blinked, catching the moment, catching the implication. "Yes. We were just saying goodbye," I finished. Lucas glanced at me. I smiled at him. A real one. Ethan looked between us, then nodded. "I hope you're happy, Clara." "I am." He lingered a second longer, then turned and walked back to the woman who was always his beginning. And I walked back to the man who had never once asked me to be anyone but myself. The gala wound down just after midnight. Lucas and I walked out under the soft twinkle of street lamps, the night crisp and clear. He handed me his suit jacket when I shivered slightly. "You okay?" I looked up at the stars. "Better than okay." He studied me. "You don't look shaken." "I'm not." I think that was the closure I didn't know I needed. He smiled. "You handled it like a queen." Correction, I handled it like Clara Wynne. Former stand-in. Current leading lady. He laughed. "You always were." We reached the car. Before he opened the door, he turned to me. "You sure you're done with that chapter?" I looked him in the eye. "I didn't close it," I said. "I rewrote the ending." Then I leaned up and kissed him, soft, slow, certain. Not because I needed to forget the past, but because I'd finally remembered who I was. And she deserved a better beginning. 2 weeks later I hosted a little housewarming. Nothing extravagant. Just fairy lights in the backyard, warm cider, cookies shaped like stars, and neighbors dropping by with casseroles and too much laughter. Lucas came with a potted bonsai tree. "I didn't kill it," he said proudly. "You've grown," I teased. Duchess immediately tried to claw the pot. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood in the doorway of my little yellow kitchen and looked around. No contracts. No roles. No pretense. Just peace. And love. Not borrowed, not begged, not conditional. Finally fully mine. The end.